So while I was in college, I was still involved with sport karate, and I started a small sport karate team, and so we were training that. But my love for mixed martial arts and grappling really started to overtake. So I literally just one day said to the guys, "Okay, guys, we're going to go on the ground and we're going to try and headlock each other." I knew nothing more. And you have a bunch of kickboxers on a wooden floor rolling around trying to headlock each other. So, but one thing I was maybe good at was I was able to like watch Royce's fights, and I'd see a sequence and I'd try and replicate it on my poor kid brother. I'd be bending his arm until I got a scream, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's it, that's an arm bar." And then I would very poorly try to show that to the kickboxing group. And there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of, trying to figure out things, because in Ireland, we had very little. We had good judo players, and that was one of my first exposures to high-level grappling. I got to train with a national team member, and I learned a lot from him. And our wrestling scene is very small, not much wrestling at all. So just trying to pick moves up. I started traveling. I went to the States a few times, and whenever somebody would come to Europe, if a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt came to Europe, no matter where I was, I'd make sure I'd go there, go to the seminar. I was good at note taking. I was good at kind of analyzing moves, and I'd literally just come home, write them all out, and then just drill and repeat. And yeah, I look back now, and kind of what took me, let's say, 5 years to get, I can do with someone now in 6 months. So that the speed at which now we can get guys to a good level is pretty incredible compared to how it was at the beginning. So I had an opportunity to train with John Machado. So the Gracies are the first family of Jiu-Jitsu, the most famous, but they have cousins called the Machado brothers. And there's 5 brothers. And there was one of the brothers, he was born with deformity, so he only has one hand. And he became an expert at grappling. So I just thought that was incredible, because the hands are so a big part of what we do, grabbing all the time. And he was able to do it with one hand. So I went over to train with the Machado brothers in LA. I spent a couple of weeks there, and then so that was the beginning of it. And then I would just go anywhere I heard there was jiu-jitsu on, I'd visit. And we were lucky that one of the most successful Gracies in all of jiu-jitsu, Hodger Gracie, he moved to England with his father, and I got a good relationship with them, and they were based in Birmingham, which is only an hour away. So most weekends, or at least one weekend a month, I'd go over to Birmingham and just pick his brain for as much as possible, learn as many techniques, come home, and my little group is starting to grow and grow. And then by the time I graduated, I was 5 years to get my degree. I said, you know what, I can put the engineering, kind of like yourself, I get the certificate to my parents, and went, "Are you happy? I did it." But now I'm going to go and see if I can make a go at running a martial arts club full time. So I opened up my first club. I suppose that's, I was 25, so that's 22 years ago. And just kept going, it kept growing, and here we are today. So I would say I started very, like I said, there was no instructors here, so I was just fumbling around. I would have started that maybe 27 years ago. And then my first full-time club was about 22 years ago. I opened my first full-time club. So my full-time career now is I'm coaching mixed martial arts. And for that, you need to have all the elements. So we'd say a very simple breakdown would be you need to be able to kickbox, you need to be able to wrestle, and then you need to have submissions, or jiu-jitsu is one of those martial arts on the ground. So you have to be good at all aspects of it if you want to compete in mixed martial arts. For me, my personal love and what I train daily to this day is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's a little bit kinder on the body, it's mostly on the ground. We do some takedowns, but it's mostly on the ground. And you can kind of do this forever. There's no striking involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so you don't get the heavy impact. You don't get the heavy impact of the throws, because it's, like I said, it's mostly on the ground. So I find it, I say it's somewhat like yoga with a purpose. Or like, because it get into a very almost meditative state when you're flowing and you're rolling on the ground, you're trying to submit your opponent, they're trying to submit you, and during those moments, it's very hard to worry about your rent or your girlfriend or an argument, or because you're there, you're present. And I find that it's almost an addictive state to be in, where you're not regretting the past, you're not worrying about the future, it's only in the moment. And I just find it's very good physically, but probably for me, more at this stage, it's very good mentally. It's the best thing for my mental health, is that I can get a couple of rounds in every day and just sort of escape the madness of professional fighting. Yeah, and I think for especially someone like Zuck, I actually got to have dinner with his coach recently. It was kind of a funny situation. There was a group of us having dinner, and he was there, a very nice guy. And we're talking away, and there's a guy, DC, Daniel Cormier, very famous fighter and now commentator. And he joined us for dinner. And he's a big character, loud. He walks in the room and he goes, "Do you guys see that Facebook guy is doing jiu-jitsu?" And his coach is there. He's like, "Yeah, I'm actually his teacher." So that was pretty funny.
That's amazing. That's crazy. Yeah, even like Tom Hardy, like other people right now, like keeping those great.
Yeah, and I there's rumors now Elon Musk, and maybe there's going to be an MMA fight between Musk and Zuckerberg. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, let's leave it there. That's crazy.
In all the years, I was probably 14 years going from white belt to black belt. And then I like to use the example, a guy I trained, Gunnar Nelson, he got his black belt in less than 4 years. So you can see the difference when someone has, good instruction right from day one, rather than I was kind of like a blind guy in a dark room fumbling around for a light switch. And now, I'm sure it's the same with Seb students, they're getting all the best information right from day one. Like we saw today, Sebastian taught a great section. That's guys who were quite new to wrestling, and even after only 90 minutes, because of the way the instruction is done, the guys were getting the hang of the techniques, the hang of the moves, starting to pull off techniques even in a live situation. So that was pretty amazing to watch. Yeah, I would say probably the average now is between 8 and 10 years, and it's a little, it's obviously a lot dependent on, you get some guys come in and they just fall in love, and they're just, I can't get rid of them. They're in the gym all the time, and guys training 5 times a week. You fast forward 2 years, these guys are already submitting blue belts. So the level gets really high, really fast now. And then, some guys come in and they have a busy lifestyle, they can train once a week or twice a week. Their progress is going to be a little bit slower.
Is it usually for them a burden? I don't want to call it a burden,
Yeah.
but kind of a burden.
Yeah, no, you're nailing it, and it's very important. That's when I know an MMA fighter is starting to get there, when it stops becoming a burden and it starts becoming a joy. So I've coached some pretty high-profile names that came to me with good striking, and like you said, their approach at the beginning was, okay, just show me enough so I can survive, I can get back to my feet, and I can get back striking. And as long as they keep that mindset, they're going to have a very limited growth, because of the way they're approaching it. And I usually just let them, I don't really try to correct that, I just allow them to do that. And after 6 months, 12 months, they start pulling off their own moves, and suddenly now there's a love of it, now there's an enjoyment with it. And once they switch from being, I'm only doing this because I have to do it, it's just eating my vegetables so I can get my dessert, now they view the jiu-jitsu as the dessert. And they really fall in love with that, and now the progress is turbocharged.
But did Conor ever fall?
So Conor, will use him, and I think he's a great example. That initially he had a powerful punch, and that was his love. And then it took a couple of years, and then suddenly there was a change in gears where he maybe even now you'd have to ask him, but it's almost like he actually loves grappling even more than striking now. Maybe that's a step too far, but he certainly really enjoys it, and he's always sending me wrestling clips or jiu-jitsu clips on his phone. Hey, what do you think of this move? What do you think of this technique? And I just love once you can start getting a fighter thinking that way, that you're not forcing them to do something, that they're doing something because they really enjoy it. The progress is going to be so much quicker. It can be a very humbling sport, and it really keeps your ego in check, because yes, especially at the beginning, the goal is the black belt, and you can get a little bit fixated on that, and then you get there, and then you realize, well, I'm still only somewhat scratching the surface. You know, a black belt is somebody that certainly has a good understanding of all the major positions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They know their attacks, their defense, its top position, bottom position, everything. But it's only at that stage then you can really start going deep into it, because when you understand, it's almost like in the Matrix when Neo starts seeing the digits. You start seeing, then you can start kind of playing with the rules a little bit and start developing your own game, and it's a very exciting time. And at the same time, you're getting a bit older, you know, time is passing, little injuries start to add up, and you can't quite do what you used to be able to do. And then that's where, you know, as a black belt, you can be going with very fit, strong blue belts, purple belts, and they start tapping you out. And it's a kind of a beautiful thing, and it's sometimes frustrating. But that's, I think if there's a lesson in Jiu-Jitsu, it's about controlling your ego and finding enjoyment in the sport, even if your body starts letting you down a little bit. You can't quite keep up with the killer 20-something-year-olds, but you can still enjoy it. I sometimes move around with the young fighters, but there's plenty of guys my age, and you can have a more, let's say, relaxed training session, still competitive, but more relaxed. And it keeps your ego in check, that's for sure. Yeah, well, I think people in general are tribal, and we like to support our team. And if you come from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, you get excited watching a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. I think it's my role, and what's very important for me is that I don't get overly attached to any one system. I describe what I do as MMA grappling. I try to avoid even using the word wrestling or Jiu-Jitsu or Sambo or Judo. It's just grappling. And grappling is, they say, the first martial art. You know, you have depictions in Roman times, you see them tying up in wrestling stances, and these are thousands of years old. So I think it's always been, and every nation seems to have its slight take on grappling of some description. But what is it? It's two people, and you're trying to use technique and leverage and timing to get the top position, use your body weight, stay on top, and then work towards fatiguing your opponent, and then eventually finishing your opponent with a submission hold. So I try to keep that on the mat, that I speak about it in broad terms, because certainly at the start, and personally I still train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu more than anything else, you almost want to like force the guys to do the martial art you think is the right one. But then you have to look at the results that are happening, and what's happening. Wrestlers are dominating, so you have to have the takedowns, you have to have the top position. And then even for wrestlers, they have to be careful that the guys on the bottom are dangerous. They have arm bars and chokes. So I think the best approach is just to be we say a jack of all, master of none, but you want to try to master them all. But just approach it in a holistic way and just see it as grappling. Yeah, that's interesting. And every time I feel we've reached there, something happens, or someone comes along and they have a new approach. Like, let's say we look at the Dagestani grappling system, and those guys really changed a lot of what was happening in mixed martial arts. But like anything that eventually gets people, that spreads. No one can keep it a secret for long. That spreads. That their techniques, their approach, their system will start to go out, and you'll find some other school of thought will come along that can maybe challenge that or better it. And it's ever evolving, and that's what we say about this mixed martial arts. If you're not evolving, if you're standing still, people are going to go ahead of you. So yes, you need to have it all, but you always have to have your eye on the future as well. And that's my job, and the coach of an MMA team is to be flexible, be ready to change. We might have a way of doing something for 10 years, and if you come across a better method, and that's maybe from my somewhat engineering and science background, that I call the mat is the laboratory. We run experiments, and wherever the evidence takes us, we go with it unemotionally. We don't, because I wanted that to be the answer, but all the evidence is pointing that way. You got to drop it and go where the evidence brings you. If I was to sum up Jiu-Jitsu in a sentence, I would say Jiu-Jitsu teaches you to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So in a very real physical way, if you've not trained and you're on your back and someone is leaning on your head and you can't quite get a breath of air, initially that's enough to make some people tap. They'll submit. But over time, they get better at just, I turn my head a little bit to the side, I keep breathing, I wait for my chance, my arm is underneath their arm, I can start getting on hip, and they can start surviving and escaping. And what I like to do with students like that is that we all naturally move away from stress. There's going to be confrontation, there's going to be a stressful situation. It's a very normal and natural instinct to go away from it. So I put those guys in a very stressful situation, but in a safe environment. It didn't, if they failed there, it wasn't going to matter. But I want them to start getting exposed to stressful situations and realizing that they can still do it, that it's not the end of the world. Because we hope that the martial arts training, yes, some will go on to do it in sport, some may even have a self-defense situation, but the majority may not even do any of that, but they will in life have a job interview. They will have an argument with somebody. They will have a girl they want to approach, whatever the case may be. And we want to, in the dojo, in the safe environment, get them used to acting while under the influence of adrenaline and cortisol and these stress hormones that make things difficult. And if you can expose them to that regularly, they suddenly realize, hey, I can do things even when I'm uncomfortable. And uncomfortable situations start to become comfortable. And I'm always most proud when it's a regular member of my gym and they tell me about it, whether it's a job interview or just asking for a pay rise, whatever situation that maybe 6 months ago they didn't have the confidence to do, and then they're like, hey, I've had a big guy on top of me squashing me and I got through that. It's going to be easy for me to talk to somebody now.
Is it really that expanding? I mean, from Jiu-Jitsu even like to the...
Well, I will go further and say I'd really see all of this as pointless if it didn't have real world applications. And for myself, I always struggled with nerves. I struggled with public speaking. Anything like that would be hell to me. But I feel through getting through the physical uncomfortableness of tough situations on the mat, now I can do things outside the gym that I never would have thought I'd be able to do. And like I said, I'm very proud and happy that I've heard that story back 1,000 times of people being able to apply the mindset of surviving in tough situations to real life stuff, and that's for me what it's really about.